Hi, thank you for joining me today. I came across this very interesting podcast conference on the Ancestral Health Symposium conference, and it's about obesity. It is about the limbic system, the brain, addictions, and conditioning on behaviors, and what we can do about that. This podcast will give you some ideas to think about with your obesity path, what you're trying to accomplish into maintaining a proper, healthy lifestyle. That's my goal. Winter is coming for me. This is a bad season for me. Winter time. I'm just like a bear. I gain weight during the winter time. I like to eat, and the sun goes down, and my sun exposure is not very good here in Maryland, and my mood seems to change during the winter. Put that all together, and it's very not a good recipe for a person who is struggling with their weight postmenopausal at my age group, right? So I like to educate myself. I'm not a closed minded person. I do not close my mind off and saying, oh, I'm fat, it's all my fault, and I can't do anything about it. No, no. You know, I had bariatric surgery, yes, and it only worked for 3 months for me, unfortunately. The tool that I chose was not very effective for my brain, for my metabolism. It was only a restrictive procedure. Had the lap in. And unfortunately, for metabolic weight loss, it was only 3 months. I have an unfilled lap in since 2016, and I've been, say, what you call behavior management into fighting the obesity, right? So, I turn to YouTube for books to read, for medical conferences, anything that I can do to maybe counterbalance my whatever it is that is malfunctioning in my body in midlife. Fortunately, I didn't have this problem up until I was like maybe 40-ish, hormonal change, whatever it is, behavioral change, maybe mental change, maybe social change, whatever it is, my body changed. I was not always obese. I was not an obese child, and I really didn't suffer from the manifestations of an overweight problem until over 40. So I'd like to turn your attention to this. This is Todd Becker. The whole podcast is about 50 minutes long. They have some interesting parts of this. They talk about, of course, the brain, different parts of the brain, and his hypothesis of different, Pavlov, Skinner, and how we relate ourselves to addiction processes, whether it be any form of addiction. And he comes across some very interesting points. He makes references to some interesting books to read if you're interested in that. Don't close your mind off of if you can't read the book, you can get your audio book, and you can get that from your local library. He also goes into the different parts of addiction, the hypothalamus, the amygdala, the ghrelin. He goes into hormesis. He goes into different methodologies of classical conditioning of make you not a responded individual to behaviors associated with addiction. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting podcast. If you don't want to watch it, you can just listen to it, turn it on. You don't have to watch him. You could just listen to it, whether you're exercising or walking or doing whatever your normal day is. I have my food prep ready. I'm going to go out for my hour walk. Then I'm going to do a job search. So I'm going to try to keep a productive day. I'm intermittent fasting. It's going to be OMAD. I'm trying to get through this day. And it's a blustery day outside here in Maryland. But I'd like to point this to your direction and link a card below.
I'm not an expert on obesity, other than
He's not an expert.
Good experience with losing weight myself. That's not my field. I'm really looking at the research and seeing what it can tell us. So as a caveat, you'll see some interesting ideas that may be controversial here, but consult with your own professional before trying to do anything extreme.
Yeah, you don't want to do anything extreme, especially if you have medical conditions, but the best thing is to go on YouTube, watch Dr. Jason Fung, watch Dr. Eric Berg, DC, he's a chiropractor, watch some of the medical gurus, different people who I have highlighted on my channel. And I try to pick out specific people who I find are interesting that are just not regurgitating somebody else's hypothesis. Maybe 90% of people do regurgitate hypotheses that somebody else invented it way long ago, and they're just putting on their own spin. But hey, that's what we do, right? To make money. Consumerism, right? Consumerism.
Right. So here's the three key questions I'd like to talk about today. First of all, these epidemics that we're seeing of obesity and addiction, are they the inevitable result of the supernormal stimuli that we see around us? Tasty food, stronger drugs, or is something else going on? And then what are the psychological and brain processes that drive our cravings for food, drugs, and addictive behavior? And how can we actually retrain our brains once we understand that to
That's no better.
make us less susceptible to those cravings, which often undermine diets and attempts to overcome addictions. So I think we can't deny these are huge issues. More than a third of Americans are now clinically obese. And
I say that's low. I say it's more than we know. And I say those numbers are lower than they actually are.
You can see that regionally this is a big problem, particularly in the Southwest and Midwest, but it's even elsewhere in the country. And the CDC is tracking even, addiction, a similar wave of epidemics going on, particularly the opioid epidemic, which we hear in the news every day, but not just synthetic opioids, heroin, other drugs that are opioids are having very strong negative effects and even a lot of overdosing. So it's a serious issue. But it's not just food and chemicals that lead to addictions, right? It's activities. It's gambling, smartphones even now. Shopping is an addiction, apparently. Social media, pornography.
Here in the weight loss community, in the groups in Facebook, you really hear the struggles, the real struggles under the radar of what people go through in these groups. You really, anybody wants to do research, all you have to do is be a participant and let them know that you're doing research. And I think people will welcome you with open arms, especially in Facebook. You will find a lot of research data, real research data, if you just read the comments of what people are saying after bariatric surgery. And it's interesting to find that with this, in this podcast, he talks about AA. And he says that after 10 years, the data that they find that with people that addiction with and alcoholics, they usually go back to drinking after 10 years. They usually revert back to some sort of addiction behavior. And that's the same way we were seeing with bariatric surgery in these Facebooks. At least I see it. I've been in these Facebook groups since 2012, and there is a correlation because what happens is the body is so smart that it becomes aware that you've had bariatric surgery. This is my hypothesis, okay? Or, you have some outside stimulus that is bringing you back into that behavior of maybe eating that stuff, or maybe you stopped exercising, or maybe you had some emotional stimulus that make you return to binging or going back to the same eating behaviors that you had previously before you had bariatric surgery. There's only a small percentage of people that were able to, I say, resist the behaviors that you had before you had bariatric surgery. You usually regress, and you usually go back to your old behavior pattern over time. And I even noticed that with myself. I have to fight it. I have to fight not going back to the same behavior and the same, I say, food groups that I liked previously before I became fat. My ancestral, maybe my Mediterranean background or whatever. I don't drink soda. I don't eat pasta. And then if I do eat that, I eat it in a controlled portion. And it's only like a half a cup or something like that. Because my body is insulin resistant. Why? I don't know. I don't know what happened to me, but I know that I cannot eat carbohydrates, any kind of sugars, anything that turn into sugars. I have to concentrate on protein. Now, whether or not that's my brain that likes that, no, it likes the sweets. It likes the carbohydrates. So I'm in constant battle. I'm in constant war with my brain all the time to try to avoid those stimulants or that satiating food groups that I love, but it's just going to do my body damage. So I constantly avoid it. And it's actually psychological warfare. So what I do is I try to counterbalance that with exercise, with reading, with other social groups that I have. So I don't directly put myself in the line of behavior action to eat those food groups that are so unhealthy for me.
The internet. And so it's got to be more than just chemicals that are driving addictions. What is it? If you look at both, you put addiction and obesity side by side, they're multifactorial. And I'm not possibly going to be able to talk about all of the causal inputs to these two issues. I mean, if you look... And these two spheres that he has outlined are so on point, Because if you watch 600 Pound Life, you get some behavioral characteristics that some of these people, what they go through, because it's not all about the food. It's the whole social dynamics who are related to them, how they grew up. Some people have emotional haunts. Some women were molested. Some people were mistreated. And some people have enablers that are affiliated with either romantically, they are enablers and they keep them in the constant cycle of obesity. At obesity, there's dietary factors, inflammation, the microbiome we've been hearing about, exercise, addiction. There's a lot of developmental issues with the stage at which you start using drugs, your risk profile, mindset. But then there's some common elements to both. The genetics, depression, anxiety, your social status.
You know, in these Facebook groups, I see the people, you know, I'm sure if they're obese, if it's a woman, I'm sure her family is obese too. She didn't just get to be obese by herself, you know, and the children, her offspring, not only do have a genetic compound link to obesity because the mother, you know, especially if it's a boy, she's going to get all her genetic profile or her chromosomal link. So then he has a genetic correlation of being obese. You see it. And the thing about it is that it's just not a one-sided deal. And I keep saying this in these groups. It's a family dynamic. When you have bariatric surgery, you need to get the whole family on board on the same program. And I keep seeing these things with these people say, well, I don't know what to feed. I don't know how. I got to cook 2 dinners. No, you don't. You don't have to cook 2 dinners. All you're going to do is take out the unhealthy thing and not eat the unhealthy thing. But then again, why are you feeding these unhealthy things to your families, right? You should be eating whole foods, not processed foods, not packaged cook your foods. Cook your foods from foods that come out of the earth. They don't come in a package. They don't come in a can. They come from the natural earth. It comes from an animal. You know, there's some debate whether or not, plant foods are good. I'm not even going to go into that whole scenario, whether it's mock meat or anything like that. Just try to stay away from chemicals. Chemicals. You read the back of the package. If it has a lot of things that you don't understand, that you can't pronounce the words, don't eat it.
Stress, these all contribute to both problems. But what I'd like to do today is just pick out one factor in this entire causal network: cravings. Why? Because you can have the best diet in the world or a very good, addiction coach who's going to help you with treatment. And if you have cravings that are irresistible, all bets are off. So how can...
Absolutely, 100%. That's probably, and bariatric surgery does take that away, your cravings. It takes it away in a big question mark, right? And I tell people in these groups, they're saying, well, I'm not hungry and I can't smell anything and I have no interest in food. That's what bariatric surgery is all about. It's designed to take away your cravings. It's called the honeymoon. It's called the manic phase. It's called whatever you want to call it. Rejoice in that time that the bariatric surgery, when they cut that ghrelin out, it's going to grow back. It will grow back if they cut it out. They didn't cut mine out because I didn't have that type of surgery. I had a restrictive procedure. So, and that's what's great about some of these procedures is that they cut out all these hormonal variants in your stomach because they don't even really know about what's going on in the stomach. I mean, they only have some hypothesis or, they really haven't identified all the gut microbes in the microbiome that are individually humanized because they just don't have that capability yet. They haven't identified yet. Will they ever do it? They probably won't because they haven't even cured cancer yet. So that's beside the point.
We deal with cravings. Let's go back to this question of supernormal stimuli. I can recommend 2 good books, one by Deirdre Barrett from Harvard on, the sort of classical biological evolutionary reasons. And
that's so true about stimuli. When I had my bariatric surgery, I was I had a 6 to 9 month pre-op, and I removed stimuluses. First, I removed, I had to quit smoking. which I was like a social smoker. Anytime I went out with the girls, I'd smoke a cigarette, but I wasn't, but anyway, and I had to remove caffeine, couldn't drink coffee, couldn't drink Cokes or anything like that. I had to remove fast foods, processed foods, and pastas. That's my genetic Mediterranean background. I was, raised on noodles, pasta, Italian food, lasagna, cheeses, all that, breads and all that kind of stuff, So I had to do that for 6 to 9 months, because when it came time for my surgery, psychologically, I didn't have to deal with that removal of addictions, I called. And the thing about it is, and I said that in my last video, nobody ever warned me that I would have this psychological warfare during this pre-op phase. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was a weirdo. I thought I was the only one. And my bariatric surgeon didn't tell me about it. My dietitian didn't tell me about it. The addictive things that are in this processed foods, that are in these fast foods, it actually was like, did a number on my psyche. And luckily I had a psychology background. I was able to put 2 and 2 together and say, hey, there must be chemicals in this food that is interacting with my brain chemistry that make me want these foods. So I went through a detox. Yes, I did. I went through a detox. Now I'm 7 years later, and I still avoid those foods. I haven't put pasta back in my diet. I haven't put sodas back in my diet. Sweets, I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect person. I will tell you that, but I wish I could go live in the mountains. If I lived in the mountains, if I was some mountain woman living off the land, I'd probably be a skinny ass biatch. I'd probably have the perfect body like Jennifer Lopez. Just to give you an idea, just because you have a perfect body don't mean you're going to keep your man, because what is it, Christy Brinkley? I just read on one of those. She's being divorced by her husband, and now everybody knows Christy Brinkley is 64 years old, and she's gorgeous just because she had, maybe she had plastic surgery, who knows? But she looks damn good for 63 years old, okay? And she's beautiful. She's pretty. She's always been gorgeous. If she can't keep a man, and guess what? Her husband, he's a nice looking guy. He is some kind of architect or whatever. They have a daughter that's 25 years old. He's got this hoochie girl that's 25 and he's like 65 or something like that. He's got this girl who's 25 years, 30 years younger than her or whatever, is old enough to be his daughter. I mean, that is just creepy. That's just creepy. Now tell me, how long do you think he is going to keep her sexually satisfied? That's why they invented Viagra for these men, right? Plus the fact that, they won't be married long, because the mentality of the generational gap between those two, who knows? Maybe they might stay together. I don't know. But there's 10 years difference between me and my husband, and I can see a difference, okay? Maybe not when we first got married, but I'm going to be 58 and he's 68, over 68. He's 68, going to be 69. No, he's going to be 70. I didn't even forget how old he is. 70. He'll be 70 in May. And believe me, we've been, when we got married in 2005, it wasn't a big generational gap, but now it is. It is now. So anyway, I sort of got off track. I digress.
Supernormal stimuli, the the classic concept here comes from Tim Berrigan, who studied how cuckoos can trick other birds to watch the eggs in their.
So anyway, I don't want to make this drawn out. Anyway, I'll link a card and you can listen to it for yourself. See you in the next video.